Hello Year 11 and welcome to our 5th video here for trigonometry. Today we're looking at quadrants, related acute angles and the sign of our trig ratios. Now we can divide our plane into 4 quadrants. We number them moving from the positive x-axis in an anti-clockwise direction. So first, second, third and fourth quadrants. First thing you need to remember, right? 4 quadrants numbered like that, first, second, third and fourth. Now, for any angle, the related acute angle is the acute angle, an angle less than 90 degrees, between the ray that represents that angle, that's what we looked at in the last exercise, and the x-axis. Okay, so the angle between the ray and the x-axis. And here is an example of a few, that these 4 angles here, 30, 150, 210 and 330, all have a related acute angle of 30 degrees. Similarly, I suppose 390 or negative 30 degrees would also have the same related acute angle, okay, between the x-axis and our ray. It doesn't matter which direction and whether that's the positive or the negative x-axis. That's the related acute angle. So we've numbered our quadrants 1, 2, 3 and 4, and our related acute angle is the angle between the ray that represents that angle and the x-axis. So for example, the related acute angle of 150 is 30, as is 210, 330, so on. Now, if theta is between 0 and 360 degrees, what values of theta have a related acute angle of 12 degrees? Like so many things, I think the solution to this is best begun with a diagram. So let's draw a diagram. Here it is. So here's my circle. It's not necessarily to scale or anything like that, but I've got 12 degrees. I'm going to have here, there's going to be 4 of these angles between 0 and 360, right? 4 of them. And the first is going to be, for example, 12. The second will be 180 minus 12. The third will be 180 plus 12. And finally, the fourth of these will be 360 minus 12. So those 4 angles, 12, 168, 192, and 348, they all have a related acute angle of 12 degrees. Now, signs and quadrants. We're talking about the signs of trig ratios in various quadrants. So, all trig ratios are positive in the first quadrant. Only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Cos and tan are negative in the second quadrant. Only tan is positive in the third quadrant. Sine and cos are negative. And in the fourth quadrant, only cos is positive. Sine and tan are negative. Now that seems like a lot of things to remember. We have a little mnemonic to help us along. All stations to central. First, second, third and fourth quadrants. A is for all, S is for sine, T is for tan, and C is for cos. Okay. All sine, cos, tan, or all stations to central. Now, to evaluate a trig function of any angle, we represent it as a ray and we find the related acute angle. Then I evaluate the trig function of the related acute angle, right? So I find the value of that ratio for the acute angle and determine whether it should be positive or negative based on the quadrant. Remember, ASTC. Right, here's an example. The exact value of sine 315 degrees. Well, you know how this is going to begin, don't you? It's going to begin with a diagram. So 315 is here. It's in the fourth quadrant. And if you like, it is 45 degrees below the x-axis, right? It's 360 minus 45. My related acute angle is 45 degrees. So we've determined that much. The related acute angle is 45. Then I find the sine of 45 degrees. Now, the sine of 45 degrees, if we remember from our triangle, is 1 over root 2. But in the fourth quadrant, only cos is positive, so my answer must be negative. So the sine of 315 degrees is negative 1 over root 2. Righto. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the graphs of trig functions. We're going to deal with these in quite a lot more detail in another unit altogether on trig functions. But the graphs of them, it's important that you recognize them, particularly what their sort of y-intercept is, and what the period of that function is, how frequently it repeats. So for sine and cos, they have a period of 360 degrees. Tan's a bit different. Tan has a period of 180 degrees. Anyway, we will, as I said, look at graphs of trig functions quite a lot more some way down the track. But for now, the important things to remember from this exercise is the numbering of our quadrants, right, moving in an anti-clockwise direction, what a related acute angle is and how to calculate it, and that our trig ratios, the sign of those, whether they're positive or negative, can be remembered using this all stations to central mnemonic. Okay, that's it. Our next exercise is on finding one trig function based on another. That's for another time. Okay, see you in class.